Hey, welcome in. It's Dubs OT with JD, the YouTube-only version here from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City for KNBR, the sports leader. What's going on, everybody? Hope you can hear me. Give me a shout if you can hear me in the YouTube chat loud and clear. When we do the toggle back and forth between Dubs OT on the radio, and we are going to be on the radio as soon as the Vikings-Lions game is complete from Detroit, we got to use a little different piece of equipment, so I want to make sure everybody can hear things loud and clear here as we get rolling. Wow, what a shellacking that was by the Sacramento Kings of the Golden State Warriors. 129-99 the final, and it didn't even feel that close. I mean, the Warriors were completely outclassed. 36-21 Sacramento into the first quarter. 39-30 Kings in the second quarter. I mean, it was just ugly, and it did not get any better in the third quarter. I mean, the Kings just kept pushing it up. Sabonis was having his way on the interior. The Warriors were missing shots and taking bad shots and turning the basketball over, and Sabonis was doing whatever he wanted. Malik Monk in for De'Aaron Fox, and Monk has been starting at the 2, but basically they handed Malik Monk the point guard duties with De'Aaron Fox out for this game, and Malik Monk cooked the Golden State Warriors. Everybody really who played tonight for the Kings, it felt like cooked the Warriors, who led by as many as 39, and they win 129-99 at Chase Center in the building behind me. So we are going to be on KNBR on the radio side coming up here when the NFL game is complete. But, yeah, ugly stuff. I mean, in all systems fail. I think the Warriors had the game in Memphis where they got beat by 50. And I think you could make the case that tonight looked as bad or worse, considering it's a home game. You rested Steph Curry last night. You got Steph Curry back. And the Warriors just looked completely physically overmatched. And I put this out there at halftime on social media, on Twitter. I mean, the Warriors were getting smoked. And the Kings have played much harder. Like, this was not the quintessential, hey, best or second best player on another team is out, and the Warriors are going to just walk all over the Kings. For those who hadn't been paying attention, yes, the Kings had gotten off to an embarrassing start, 13-19. Mike Brown was fired when they were 13-18, and the Kings then lost their first game with Doug Christie as the head coach, but they've been playing harder and better. They were getting beat by Dallas. Dallas didn't have anybody playing last week in Sacramento. Halfway through that game, third quarter, the energy completely flipped. They won that game. They had a late rally to beat Philly. They beat Memphis the other night, put 138 points up on the board. The Kings have been playing much harder since the coaching change because the Kings embarrassed themselves by being so bad at the beginning of the year that they got Mike Brown fired. And there is still a skill, size, athleticism, quickness, shooting advantage that we've increasingly seen lead to the Warriors-Kings matchup become a bad matchup for the Warriors. It really shifted. You started to see it even in the playoff series that the Warriors won, but it shifted even in the games that the Warriors won a couple early last year against the Kings, and then the Kings won. This is the fourth straight win for Sacramento over the Warriors, and in those games, as the Warriors have grown to be more dependent on TJD and Kuminga, and you know, TJD is just an awful man. He's played some of his worst basketball against the Kings and against Sabonis specifically. You see tonight where this team misses Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, he has become such a big part of late of what the Warriors have done that you miss him in this game where he's not out there. And it almost appeared as if the Warriors were a little shaken at the beginning of the game, like they were unprepared for a team to come in and like it was almost going to be some kind of an automatic win. Gutless effort for the Warriors tonight. I think in many ways, and I know we've used it a couple of different times, one tongue-in-cheek, but tonight was truly a gutless effort for the Kings. And I think it's one thing on the road against a Grizzlies team that always wants to bring the smoke against you, and you've had a week off, and we chronicled why that was so bad for the Warriors then. But to have it be a home game where you're coming off a couple of wins, and you it's like you thought you were going to get the 13-19 version of the Kings and not the team that had been playing significantly harder over the course of the last week, and still a team on paper, while they may not be a great team, and they still have a worse record than the Warriors do, as they improve to 17-19, they get their fourth straight win. They're still a very skilled team. And, I mean, the Warriors should know, whether it's Malik Monk, who's cooked them in the past in playoff games, whether it's Sabonis, who's an extremely skilled player and has had his way with TJD, even if Kevon Looney and Draymond Green have given him problems in the past. Keegan Murray was back after missing some time. He can shoot the basketball and makes a lot of the simple plays. DeMar DeRozan, somebody that they picked up who's had success against the Warriors in the past. Like, I don't know what the hell the Warriors were thinking, that this game was just going to be some kind of freaking layup at Chase Center. And so turnovers, bad shots, when the Kings kind of get on a heater and are playing well, the two things you can't do against them are turn it over and take bad shots. You play right into their hands, and they feed off of it, going back the other way because they're not a great defensive team and not a high-effort defensive team. Typically, they use their offense to ignite their defense. So when you let them off the hook and don't make them guard, you allow them to really start to have a field day the other way, and then they start caring about playing defense in short stretches at a higher clip. I mean, just a ugly, brutal debacle of a game for the Warriors, and it's the kind of game that also makes you think and makes you wonder, how can you possibly be cool standing pat if you're Golden State at this particular point in time? I mean, you look at the way TJD played tonight, and he's played better of late, but how do you not look to go make a trade for Nikola Vucevic at halftime? If you're going to, I mean, and never do we see the Warriors lineups in which they have multiple non-scorers on the court impact them as much as we've seen it impact them at times against this Kings team. So sloppy passing, just, a lack of attention to detail, shot selection, horrible, missed defensive assignments. I mean, it was like the Warriors believed that they were just going to show up and that they were playing the Kings team that had basically been a joke the first 2 months of the season, and they were getting a different Kings team tonight. And so the Warriors end up in this game where they get absolutely annihilated. 36-21 first quarter, 129-99 is the final here. Sacramento gets the win, 17-19. Warriors take the L, so 18-17 on the season, and they'll get back at it coming up on Tuesday against the Miami Heat. So, yeah, let's react to this one. And again, when the game goes final in Detroit, we'll be live on KNBR. We'll take a quick timeout. We'll switch over, and we'll be live on KNBR. And I guess it's going to be a Greg Silver night. It's Greg Silver's world tonight. Greg will join us at some point here on the radio side, not on the YouTube side, but on the radio side. He's going to join us once we get things going, and we'll get his thoughts and takes on it. We'll try and line up some phone calls and get into the action here. Just a brutal effort and an all systems fail for the Golden State Warriors in this one. Let's get into the chat. The folks want to speak, and so the floor is yours. I'm going to pause 5 seconds here to take a sip of this Kolsch. And it is Shay and Alex tonight here at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. CA on top of it, right out of the chute. I'll say it. Tonight's effort was gutless. Completely gutless. Robert, Warriors got beat from the jump. Total no-show. Andis Brown, talk about a rough loss. The defense was terrible tonight. More blow-bys and scramble mode defense. Kings got two. Look, Malik Monk and Sabonis did their thing. They basically did the Fox and Sabonis thing where Monk was attacking inside. They were kicking it out. The Kings really love to get the ball into the post and then spray it out. They like to get it into the paint, whether it's via the drive and kick, spray it out if Sabonis gets it down low and kick it to the corners, swing it, put the defense at a disadvantage where they're kind of moving around, and you can use that to attack closeouts. And scramble mode defense, blow-bys, poor closeouts. Kings got extremely comfortable scoring in the paint, and typically when they do that, it's De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. Tonight it was Malik Monk playing the role of De'Aaron Fox in that void. We shall see as things move forward. Enrique Rivera, JK out will hurt this team. Yeah, I thought the Warriors, and I thought they looked a little bit shook in the news that broke before the game tonight. Jonathan Kuminga is going to miss at least the next 3 weeks, set to be reevaluated 3 weeks from today with a significant ankle sprain. So that was 11 games minimum for Jonathan Kuminga that he's going to miss. So tonight, for sure, the game on Tuesday against Miami, and then the 4 games on the road trip. So that's 6 right there. And then the Warriors come home, and 3 weeks is the 26th. I mean, that's you're talking about missing a bunch of games now. The next 5 with the Miami game and the 4 that are going to be played on the road, and then the Warriors come back and play Washington. They come back and play Boston. I mean, that's 5-6 games right there. 7. They play the Kings again in that stretch. They play the Bulls again. I mean, we're talking a minimum for Jonathan Kuminga, the 28th of the month when the Warriors play the Jazz. So he's going to miss. I mean, we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it's as many as 11 games here. And so the Warriors are going to have to figure it out. And he's become such a big part of what the Warriors have done lately in terms of the secondary scoring, that they look like a team that was a little lost and I think a little shaken as to where they were going to find some of that over this longer haul stretch that he's going to be out. So, yeah, Enrique, I do think there's a pathway for the Warriors to be able to win games without Kuminga, but they got to be a hell of a lot more locked in than they were tonight. Enrique, Waters and Hield. Yeah, not a night where Lindy Waters was making shots. Buddy Hield really, really struggled. Bad passes, turnovers, not hitting shots. Enter the Draymond says humiliation. Plain and simple. Yeah, humiliation. Humiliation. Dubs were cooked. Inconsistent offense, non-existent defense, and turnovers, says Rebel DeSounds. Ugly, ugly stuff. I mean, I think it's as bad. And look, if you watch the Memphis game, when they got smoked in Memphis a couple of weeks back, I mean, that's the kind of thing that can happen from time to time on the road. And the Grizzlies are always – but here's the thing. The Kings are always going to be up to play the Warriors. That's the other part of this equation. Kings are always going to view the Warriors as big brother, especially as there are still players who've played in the playoff series on both of these rosters. And so tonight was, I think, from the Kings standpoint, a little bit of a measuring stick game for them, even though the teams have pretty similar records coming into this one. And the Kings are on a heater. And when the Kings are on a heater, you got to play buttoned-up basketball to beat them. This is not the team, as I've mentioned a couple of times, that they had faced earlier. Everyone's worst nightmare, JD said firing Mike Brown was dumb. Doesn't look dumb so far. Yeah, I think it will still prove to be dumb. I think it was moronic. I mean, what the Kings are in right now is the fired coach bump. And, I'll tell you a few things about they're in the fired coach bump. Sometimes when you fire a coach, especially a team that played as embarrassingly as the Kings did, when you fire the coach, there's a stretch in which the team plays significantly harder. And I think that's what you're seeing. It's not like they're really doing anything different. No, they're not running different sets. The Mike Brown system is still there that they're running. And look, I said this. I thought the Kings were probably due for a little bit of a turn toward the positive anyway, because they had lost so many close games. I think an inordinate amount of close games they had lost. So I think there was set up to be a minor turning and tweaking of the corner for them. And so, to be perfectly honest, I think they were going to start playing better even if Mike Brown was the coach. Everyone's worst nightmare. But no, I think it was a bad move. And here's the other thing about the Kings the last 3 years. They are the ultimate low-stakes team. They are the ultimate, when these guys got on their roll, it's zero expectations. Anytime you've had – and the people at Sacramento know this, because at times they've set some irrational expectations, even for this team this season. And I know this to be true. When they got DeRozan, it was, the talk in Sacramento was as if they were going to be a 50-plus win team that could possibly contend for a conference finals. I mean, laughable type shit that was being spouted about there. But the reality is this group of Kings, whenever there's actually been expectation, and the expectation started after the playoff series where the Warriors beat them, they have been disappointing to their own fan base and to their owner and to their, to themselves, I think, to a certain extent since then. And so I think the other thing that's happened with the Kings with the firing of Mike Brown is they played at such an embarrassing level that they all had to take a look in the mirror, but it also wiped away the expectations. All of a sudden, the Kings became a joke again, and everybody's laughing at them, and nobody's taking them seriously. And the Kings are still enough of a talented team to be able to win some games in those settings. And in fact, that's really the sweet spot in which the Kings got on the roll that led them to winning 48 games 2 years ago. Nobody took them seriously. They had zero expectations. Mike Brown came in and was really coaching them hard early, and they were playing their ass off every night in a league where most teams don't do that. And they were a talented and skilled enough team to win a lot of regular season games in doing that, and they were very good in close games a couple of years ago. And they hadn't been quite as good in close games. They hadn't quite played as hard as frequently over the last couple of years, I think in part because they thought they had arrived and that they could just show up and win games without playing hard consistently for closer to 48 minutes. And because they had become kind of a laughingstock again with the 13-18 start and Mike Brown's subsequent firing, they're playing a lot harder. And again, I don't think the Kings are an untalented team. I don't think they're a 50-win team by any stretch of the imagination. But they're a team that you definitely have to take seriously, especially if you're the Golden State Warriors, to bring it back to them. And the Warriors should know that more than anybody. The Warriors should know that because they've had such battles with the Kings over these last couple of years. So kind of a perfect storm of a lot of things that have gone on for both of these teams this season. It meets tonight, and the Kings played one of their best, if not their best game of the year, and the Warriors played – I think it's between this game and the Memphis game, clear cut, as far as the worst games of the year for Golden State. So, yeah, Enrique Rivera, Lindy was clanking per usual. Joe H. and San Jose Jazz fan 4 both saying, hey, Curry comes back and they lose. I think we know who the problem is. Yeah, that's a chuckle. That's chuckle-worthy. No question. Alpha. The first quarter was the Warriors' demise. Too much soft play from TJD and way too many turnovers as a team. They absolutely missed Kuminga, but still a gutless effort. Yeah, this is the kind of game where maybe Kuminga scores 8 or 10 in the first quarter in the paint, hits a 3, and instead of down 15, maybe you're down 7 or 8. Maybe you're down 5. And it allows you to get on a run as the Warriors did in the second quarter a little bit, and maybe that run ties the game or puts you ahead, and then you're in a game. Then it feels like a real game. There's no doubt. I mean, Kuminga was missed tonight. I don't think Kuminga playing or not playing was the difference in winning or losing tonight, given the way everybody else played. But without a doubt, they missed Kuminga. they're going to have to figure out how to get it done without Kuminga. The issue that I have more than anything is the gutless effort, is the soft play, is the they just look lost out there tonight. And again, tonight is not the game that bodes. Tonight's not the game you look at when Mike Dunleavy says, hey, we want to evaluate the next few weeks and need to figure out what this team is. Like, here's the next part of that equation. You can't look at the Kuminga injury and use that as a reason to just pack it in either and not make any moves and say, well, if Kuminga hadn't gotten hurt, this team was starting to figure out some stuff with Kuminga. No, this team should be able to go out there and play respectable basketball. I don't know what their record is, but they should be able to play respectable basketball, if not 500 or even slightly above basketball without Kuminga in a stretch here over the course of a couple of weeks. And again, it makes you wonder, and it concerns you immediately, because Kuminga had been playing well the last month, and it's not like the Warriors have necessarily been cooking it anyway. So it makes you wonder, and I think get a little bit worried if the Warriors wind up now not having him for a period of time. All right, more from the YouTube chat. And I guess that there are some Kings fans in the chat as well. I mean, everyone's worst nightmare is one. Nobody, I'll say this, nobody should be crying about the officiating on the Warriors side of things tonight. Joke's on you. Warriors will be lucky to even be in the play-in. They might low-key be tanking for Cooper Flagg light years ahead of us. Yeah, I don't know about that at this point. But the one thing that, again, I'll say it, the Warriors have to do is look to take a nice glance in the mirror and come back and realize that they have to play a lot harder. I mean, it really felt like the Warriors thought they could coast in this thing, and I think that's the most alarming component to all of it. All right, more here in the chat. San Jose Jazz fan, what's your definition of gutless again? Well, tonight was gutless. Tonight was soft. Tonight was gutless. Tonight was you look like you could show up with the Kings not having De'Aaron Fox, and you were just going to win the game and give a C effort and go through the motions, and that the Kings are in such shambles, which, by the way, they haven't been for the last week. If that, maybe they were for a few weeks before that, but they have not been in shambles for the last week. And again, you got to know your opponent and know where your opponent is in the trajectory of their season. And so gutless to me is getting out hustled on the boards immediately. Gutless is blow-bys for kickouts and scramble defense, like Andis Brown mentioned. Gutless is just not showing any fight. I mean, really, I thought tonight's game was truly the definition of gutless for the Golden State Warriors. I thought it was absolutely ugly. And no cap 757, Steve Kerr just said yesterday, we love this group. We need more time to evaluate. Now, in fairness, that was before the Kuminga injury. But, I mean, how can you look at tonight and the way the Warriors played and think, hey, need more time to evaluate? And if you do think you need more time to evaluate, well, the evaluation is at a point where, tonight is a negative to the tune of make some wholesale changes. So I think that's truly what it's got to be. Mickey D, yep, JD, the people at Chase were let down. I mean, light the beam chants throughout the second half and in the fourth quarter. It was a debacle. There's no question about it. And Robert saying, and I agree with this, they want to wait a minute to make a trade at the deadline. It'll be too late. Yeah, they need to make the trade sooner or later. And I think with an emphasis on sooner, because, again, what are you playing for later? And I know, when they win a couple games, it's, they're only 2.5 out of 5th. And you're also 2.5 out of 12th at this particular point in time. So you gotta figure it out. And you got to make the determination whether you want to be able to make a push toward trying to be a team that can be a threat to get a 6 seed. It's not happening with this roster as it's currently constituted. The Kuminga injury only furthers that. And here's my thing again. You cannot use the Kuminga injury as an excuse to just dial it back or call off the dogs or say on to next year. Can't have it. All right, that's going to do it for the YouTube-only portion. A good 25 minutes of me ranting and raving and interacting with the good folks in the YouTube chat. We're going to pause here quickly, and we're going to come back, and we're going to be joined on KNBR. We'll get the show kind of restarted there. 808 KNBR, the phone lines will be open at that point. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line open at that point as the Warriors get smoked 129-99. John Dickinson here, KNBR, the sports leader.
Final buzzer. This is where you come for instant post-game reaction.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is Dubs OT
Can't wait.
with John Dickinson.
Hey, JD, what you up to, sugar? Long time no talk to.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
It will be the worst home loss of the year in terms of Cleveland, and now this game on this homestand. The Warriors have had 2 blowouts in this building. And so for Sacramento, they've won 4 in a row. The Warriors unable to build on their winning ways. And they've got a little regrouping to do before Tuesday night in the Miami Heat.
Well, this game just shows you the margin for error this year for the Warriors is so small. And if you get off to an awful start, bad things can happen.
Yeah, and the Warriors did get off to an awful start. Let's try not to get off to an awful start here on Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader as we welcome you in, joined now on the radio. Make sure for those of you watching on YouTube and Twitch that you can hear us. We made the switch. So again, I got the headset on now. Greg Silver's here. Again, it's Greg's world. If Greg says, hey, I want to watch the football game and not come on the YouTube portion, it's just like, all right, we're going to reorganize the show. And we're going to say, all right, yeah, you can hop on in this first segment. Greg, I was ranting and raving. And 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627 is the number to give us a call or shoot us a text here, Dubs OT with JD. And it's a Greg Silver night here on this Sunday out at Harmonic. I'm having my beer. We got Alex and Shay in the house. Did the Warriors not know their opponent tonight? Because it sure looked like the Warriors didn't know their opponent tonight or believed, and I've been talking about this on YouTube for the last half hour. Did they think they could just show up tonight and play a C game and they were going to win? I mean, have they not played the Sacramento Kings enough to know that you have to play buttoned up against them, regardless of their record, regardless of whether De'Aaron Fox is in or out, or they can kick your ass, that they have players that create matchup problems for the Warriors in ways that other teams don't always, in ways other teams do, but also in ways that I don't know. It just, to me, I think this is the most gutless effort of the season for the Warriors. I think it's more gutless than the game we saw against the Grizzlies. I know we were kicking around the beginning of that Dallas game with all the 3-pointers, kind of a jokingly gutless. But to not look at what the Kings had done, and this isn't going to be a debate about whether the Kings are for real or not under Doug Christie. Like, I don't give a damn about that. I almost said a word that I did say on YouTube and can't say on the radio, so I'm kind of checking myself here. But here's the reality, Greg, and welcome in. It's the Warriors thought they could just show up and win this game. And, I mean, it couldn't have been more farther from the truth as the Kings just came in and smoked them in the first quarter and had their way with them in all 3 quarters. Like the beam chance in the fourth quarter at Chase Center. Embarrassing, gutless, I mean, unacceptable. All of those things apply to the Warriors tonight. Hi, Greg. I'm a little fired up.
Yeah, well, I love Fired Up, JD. And first of all, hey to everybody in the chat and listening on the radio. And yeah, look, I didn't think I needed to come on tonight because Warriors Kings is like a JD wheelhouse. But also, that's what we suffered through on April 16th when the season ended and did a whole long show with it. So had to feel like I needed to stop by even before this game played out. And look, I don't want to sound like a downer from the get-go, but I would have been very surprised if I came on the show and we were talking about the Golden State Warriors winning their 3rd game in a row. And some of that has to do with, the Kings playing better basketball under Doug Christie. I think they're now 4-1 since the coaching change. But mostly what it has to do with is the Warriors are not good enough to where they've put together solid, consistent, sound basketball to where I'm going to believe that they'll do that 3 times in a row. And it's not that it can't happen. I would love to be proven wrong a little bit later down the line. But until I see a more consistent product over the last, 2.5 seasons, I'm just going to continue to think that you're going to get some nights that are good, some nights that look like this. And yeah, the Kings ran them out the gym. They're capable of doing that. And I think you said it really well on social media because I was following along in that first half, which is even in the series that the Warriors ultimately won in 7 games, the Kings looked like the younger, more athletic team, and the Warriors have continued to look kind of old against them. So to just think you could kind of half-ass it and not really show up and play your best basketball, well, that's what's going to happen. You will lose games in the first quarter.
Yeah, it was just, bad shots, shot turnovers, and then actual turnovers. Soft play from Trace Jackson Davis. He was overmatched in the play-in game by Domantas Sabonis. And look, we've seen Draymond Green have success against Sabonis. We've seen Kevon Looney have a lot of success against Sabonis in that playoff series. But, one of the many things that I think started to shift this individual matchup more in the Kings' favor more frequently is the fact that Sabonis is at his most comfortable, and the Kings are at their most comfortable when Sabonis is the focal point of everything. And the Warriors kind of took him away at times at the expense of, well, De'Aaron Fox is going to be the guy who's going to score all the points. And I think the Warriors were actually in a lot of ways fine with that. Now, De'Aaron Fox is still good enough to get close to 40 and beat you in some of those games. And we've seen him do that in this 3-year run of games between these two teams head to head. But when the Kings are at their best, it runs through Sabonis, and he's kicking it out for threes. And whether it's Fox or Monk, they're using the gravity of the ball movement to attack off the dribble, and they love to get it into the paint and spray it out to three-point shooters. And their system was when it's clicking and they're hitting shots, it energizes the rest of their team. They're not a good defensive team. When they make shots, they become a better defensive team because their effort level increases. I was talking about this on YouTube as well. This is also a huge game for them. I get it. It's not a huge game for the Warriors. The Warriors have won championships, and they're kind of mid right now, as Steph Curry said last week. But the Kings view coming to Chase Center as a playoff game on January 5th. And so if you're the Warriors, you have to meet that level of intensity, fair or unfair. And even if you don't meet that level of intensity, you have to meet that level of basketball IQ at the beginning of the game, because they are the kind of team, like many in the league, that can get on a heater and it can, flip a game in a positive light for them and in a negative light for their opponent. So to me, the first thing off the jump, and man, you're not going to want to miss what Steve Kerr had to say post-game. That's going to be coming up at 9 o'clock here in our Sounds of Dubs OT. You got every loss is not just a loss. This loss is significant considering the way that the Warriors played for a team that's trying to build a little bit of momentum. And here's the other thing I was wondering about, Greg. I also had this thought. The Warriors seemed a little shook at maybe the loss of Jonathan Kuminga. I don't know what it was, but they just kind of played like a team that was unsure that they had enough, I thought, in the first quarter of the game. And Kuminga has become such a big part of the Warriors' offense, and there's been so much discussion about the Warriors not having enough offense that immediately you take him out for 3 to 4 weeks minimum 2 hours before the game. And it kind of makes you wonder if maybe there was a little bit of a psychological impact as to this team having to look in the mirror and think, how are they going to get through the next month, when a day ago the next month appeared to be so promising.
Yeah, but my immediate response to that, and I'm not saying I disagree whatsoever, but my immediate response is, you just won a game against a team that completely embarrassed you in Memphis a couple of weeks ago. You beat that team, and granted, they didn't have Ja Morant, but you didn't have Steph Curry, and you didn't have Jonathan Kuminga for the second half, and you were able to hold strong and defend your home court. So why in the world would a Kings team, who's also had their own struggles this year, coming in, have you shook when, sure, you don't have Kuminga, and don't get me wrong, he's played really good basketball as of late, but you got Steph back, who's been like the ultimate haunting figure for the Sacramento Kings up until April 16th last year. And I guess it really all turned with that 24-point blown NBA Cup game that kept the Warriors out of the tournament. Have the Warriors not beaten the Kings since that game?
It's 4 straight. The Kings won the last 2 They won that game in Sacramento, which was the third meeting last year. They won by 1 point a year ago in January at Chase Center, and then they won the
Steph got
game
boxed up and turned the ball over.
Exactly, and so they won. Yeah, then they won. Yeah, they won the play-in game. So that, and then tonight, so it's four straight meetings now for Sacramento against the Warriors. And again, I think we've seen that sway in the individual matchup. And the one thing I will say, again, to the Kings' credit, I'm putting this on the Warriors in the 408. Disgraceful. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. Disgraceful for the Warriors against Sacramento, a team they should beat at home. Have to beat the subpar teams like tonight. Here, the Warrior fans should not be having this inferiority, superiority complex against with Sacramento. Like, that's the part. And again, if the Warriors felt that tonight, honestly, shame on them. Like, it just, should you beat them without De'Aaron Fox? Yes, but there's a difference between saying it and believing it and actually what you have to do to go out and do it. You have to go out and play, and they just didn't do it tonight. And again, when you have a bad matchup against a team, you also have to make sure that you're extra buttoned up, extra flawless in your execution, and extra ramped up to your intensity level, right? What's the one way you can offset talent or matchup? Playing harder. And the Warriors had none of that tonight. And again, I'm not even going to go back-to-back because Stephen freaking Curry didn't play last night. So if you're getting Steph Curry back tonight, that in and of itself should be enough of a lift to where everybody else is playing their ass off.
Yeah, and going back to where they shook about Jonathan Kuminga, you shouldn't be if you get Steph back. I get that if Steph's going to sit out and you get the news about Jonathan Kuminga, maybe there's a little bit of psychological iffiness to that. And look, again, this has nothing to do with Kuminga not playing good basketball and not being an important piece that's going to be out, but just you're at home and you're playing against a team that has had plenty of issues of their own, and nobody besides Andrew Wiggins in the first quarter was anywhere to be found. Buddy Hield was atrocious. I like Trace Jackson-Davis, but he got completely bullied and was just a full-on disaster. We got to call it like it is. Aside from having,
I think he was the worst player
points,
on the floor. I think he was the worst, and there are others who had a worse plus-minus. Buddy Hield among them, minus 25. He was a disaster tonight. But yeah, TJD he had nothing.
Well, and take away the 11 points and 3 possessions mini run that they had there in the second quarter, there was hardly anything to point to as a positive tonight except for Pat Spencer coming in to start the fourth quarter. I laughed because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, back in 2015, a player like Pat Spencer would have been starting the fourth quarter and getting a lot of minutes. In 2025, Pat Spencer's starting the fourth quarter, but for a whole different reason.
Well, and here's the thing, and Diggum117, Charmin Soft TJD in the YouTube chat. The one thing is that Domantas Sabonis is going to bring physicality on the offensive end. He doesn't necessarily bring it on the defensive end, but on the offensive end, he's always throwing himself around. He's always trying to lean in. He's trying to truck you. He's trying to make his presence felt, even if he's kicking it out to three-point shooters. And look, I don't think there's a player that Trace Jackson-Davis has played worse against in his matchups in the NBA here in his first year plus. And so, again, tonight is one of those, if we're evaluating everything as it relates to the big picture, I mean, tonight's one of those things where, and I said this on the YouTube chat or on the YouTube only portion of the show, if you're looking to go get Nikola Vucevic, go get Nikola Vucevic at halftime, given the way Trace Jackson-Davis played, because at least Vucevic will score 20 to offset Sabonis' 20. Like, neither one of them will guard each other, but at least you're canceling each other out. I mean, TJD wasn't doing it on either side tonight.
No, he wasn't. And, I mean, the turnovers were really bad, too, having – 7 turnovers in the first quarter, multiple moving screens. The one that Draymond threw, and on TV when I was watching, the camera actually cut away, so I didn't get the full view. But Draymond tried to force it up toward half court, somebody got in front of it and it led to an easy Kevin Huerter 3. Like Draymond and Steph, I get that they're going to have a certain amount of turnovers as the primary ball handlers, and that's kind of how it's always been. But there's a difference. There are layers to turnovers, right? There's turnovers that you can live with and you can have, and then there are ones that are just so unnecessary or careless or unforced. And I feel like when Draymond and Steph are having those kind of turnovers, then it adds up real quick and it sparks runs in the wrong direction really, really fast.
Yeah, and again, it's the shot turnovers. It's all of those things that you just can't have. It all comes back to the simple phrase: you got to play buttoned up. You have to take good shots. You have to move the ball. You can't give extra possessions. You can't give easy transition opportunities the other way. And the Warriors, they did all of that. In the YouTube chat, Enrique Rivera says, Kuminga, go bye-bye. I actually, and then Robert immediately chimed in after that. I definitely don't see Kuminga being traded anymore personally. I will say this, Greg, and I'll get your thoughts on it. I'll be short. I think Jonathan Kuminga is significantly less likely to be traded now because of the injury. I mean, he's going to be out. 3 weeks is January 26th. That is basically 10 days before the trade deadline. And again, there's no guarantee he's going to be back immediately. Like anytime a player is reevaluated, and the Warriors said reevaluated in 3 weeks, usually there's at least a few days, if not another week in play before the player would come back. So that leads this thing right up to the trade deadline. And again, the only way I think Kuminga winds up being more apt to get moved is if the Warriors play really well in this stretch without him, to the point where it almost sends an alert up to Joe Lacob that says, hey, you can get by maybe trading this guy for somebody less than a star, because the rest of this team is good enough to make an impact without him. If it goes the other direction over the course of these next 3-4 weeks, I don't think Kuminga's going anywhere. But all told, I think it's much less likely because of the injury that the Warriors will look to make a rush. Because, again, here's what the Warriors don't want to do, Greg. They don't want to above maybe everything. They don't want to look bad in a trade. And if you deal Kuminga now, he's going to have barely played in the time before the trade deadline. And so the most recent memory of Kuminga will be a dude who was having a really big impact on this Warriors team before he went down.
No, you're 100% right. And I'll even add one thing to what you did say, and I'll do that in a second, but I'll start from the first part, which is the injury. And yeah, Gary Payton II got reevaluated today, and I'll do not disturb myself because I'm immediately entering group message mania. And you ever get that panic when you see one text in a group message and you're like, oh no, God, here it comes. Yeah. So just had to do a little digression there. But yeah, when Gary Payton II got evaluated today, and now he's going to miss a few more games. So let's just say this is the short end of what we think Jonathan Kuminga is going to miss. He's going to be back end of the month, essentially. And then it's a week until the trade deadline. I thought immediately, okay, he's definitely not getting traded now because they were already reluctant to trade him in the first place. And the last few games in particular, he has turned a corner in the sense of playing really well and being able to play with Steph and Draymond effectively, doing the best basketball he ever has as a 4, coming off the bench and still being able to push about 30 minutes. I will say, I agree with you in the sense of the only way Jonathan Kuminga could be more tradable is if the Warriors play really well, but I don't think that's going to fly with this ownership group. Like, I get the logic of what you're saying, but I don't see Joe Lacob or Mike Dunleavy watching this Warriors team thrive without Jonathan Kuminga. Say Kyle Anderson, someone who is getting minutes at the 4 now as a result and making a really big impact. I just see the logic from their perspective of how they've operated and how they have looked at Kuminga and possible trade packages to be, oh, well, look how much better we're playing and we're about to get Kuminga back. Like, this is going to be great. So I think there's a really slim chance we see him moved at all, considering that even when he was in his most inconsistent phases, they were always saying, we're not going to trade Jonathan Kuminga unless we get someone who's an all-star today.
Yeah, and again, that's the point in which the Warriors were up against here as they look to evaluate everything. Where are you on the needing more time to evaluate the roster thing? I mean, don't we know what this team is? We know what this team is. This team is what it was last year. This team is what it was 2 years ago. It looked like maybe it wasn't going to be that at the beginning of the season. And I don't want to put it all on DeAnthony Melton, but like their chance to be something different is, in my mind, is gone. Because now because all you have to do is go back to how it looked. They were a really good defensive team. The depth was working. They had guys were making shots. Everybody was contributing. Yes, against some maybe lesser opponents.
Buddy Hield was good for his 10 games.
Buddy Hield was good. Buddy Hield was probably a little over the top good. Let's be honest there. I think we can safely say that. But it was just, there was a flow to it. There was an order to it, even though Kerr was playing a lot of guys and they weren't super Kuminga dependent to win. Like that was the path toward maybe being something different from what they've been. I feel like where they've been these last couple of weeks and where they are right now, even with the Dennis Schroeder acquisition, and now especially with Kuminga going out, it got to the point, and it kind of got to this point a little bit last year down the stretch, and it got to this point even a little bit 2 years ago down the stretch, where it was almost Kuminga's got to play well for them to win, right? And that is not sustainable. Like that's not the mark of a team that's actually going to make some noise in my mind. Like that's the mark of a team that's actually a little bit more cobbled together and not cohesive, right? And again, that's no shade on Kuminga specifically, but it very much feels like last year. It feels like last year in really right around this time. I mean, this is I think the 1 year anniversary today is the Kuminga's lost faith in Steve Kerr leak after the Nuggets game. And really since then, he played better. Kerr gave him more opportunities, all of those things. But I don't know, man. Like, I think we know what this team is. I think we know what their deficiencies are. I think we know what they need. And I'll be honest, I think the front office has to stop being so risk averse that you just do nothing, because I think they are destined to be fighting for the 10 seed if they do nothing. Be fighting, they're going to be just close enough to the 6 seed to say they're in it, and just close enough to the 12 seed to be maddeningly in a worst case scenario danger zone of missing the whole thing altogether. And again, tonight is a perfect example. For Warrior fans that don't think that the Kings and the Warriors are close to the same level, I mean, watch the game tonight and watch the last 4 times that these teams have played each other. And the Kings still are 2 games worse than the Warriors in the standings, even after tonight.
JD, I wouldn't have told you, when you asked the question, do we know what this roster is? Do we still need to evaluate it? I wouldn't have said the first thing tonight I would have been stunned if I came on and said, wow, the Warriors have won 3 in a row. They're on a little bit of a streak, because they're just too inconsistent, and we do know what this roster is. So, yeah, not every game is going to be some giant narrative, right? Like, you're not going to lose to the Grizzlies by 55 points or be losing by as much as 57. They come to Chase Center, you beat them. It's all different every game, but the highs and lows for them to play well, we've seen them be the good version of the Warriors, but that needs a lot of things to align in their favor, and that just doesn't happen to the degree that it used to when everyone was younger and the players were better. And I do think it's similar to last year. I think they're better defensively, and I think they're worse offensively. I know everybody had their opinions about Klay Thompson. Look, he still was a full-time shooting threat, and people, like Klay Thompson was getting compared to the Klay Thompson of his prime pre-injury, when it was damn near automatic out there, just like his fellow Splash brother. He wasn't that, but the The Warriors don't have anything like a Klay Thompson offensively, and so I don't think they're quite as good at all offensively. Defensively, maybe they're a little bit better, but they're still a little bit undersized. They can't figure it out matchup-wise. Everybody has a different skill set, so there's constant substitutions and constant questions. Buddy Hield, he can make threes sometimes, but he's kind of worthless on defense. Trace Jackson-Davis can rim protect, but then he can get bullied by other big men. Kevon Looney can be kind of steady, but isn't going to give you anything explosive or take over a game. Draymond has to play well. Steph has to play well. Moody has to be making his threes, and even so, his minutes are inconsistent. And so, as I'm going on this whole ramble, you can just see, and I don't know if Kyle even has this drop or knows where it's located, but it is my old Bob Myers. It's just exhausting.
Yeah, it is really. It is really exhausting to try and get through all the different pieces and parts and everything. And Greg, we're going to let you go on that note. I do want to ask you, though, because we're going to play it coming up in the Sounds of Dub's OT segment. So I'll read the quote. And our guy Austin Scott in the press conference, and he posted it to the KNBR socials. Steve Kerr tonight after the loss, quote, "A loss is a loss. It's not any more alarming than any other loss." Your thoughts?
I love Steve Kerr, but that's a hard disagree for me. And it's easy to say that as someone whose job is not to coach basketball, but to talk about it. You can't have an effort like that at home against a team that's in the same caliber as you. I'm sorry. In the standings, yes, but that sets off a lot of alarms when your team comes out like that. And I'm with you. You can't call it a back-to-back when it's not a back-to-back for Steph.
No, you definitely cannot. And Stephen Wu in the YouTube chat, Warrior season is over, so let the rebuild begin. They're not rebuilding. They're not rebuilding. That's again, it just – and that's exactly the conundrum, although I don't really think it's a conundrum for this team. They're not rebuilding. So, I mean, when you look at it, if this squad can't play well as they're currently constituted, then you need to look to go add to it because Stephen Curry's not getting any younger. You're not keeping Steph Curry around for 2 to 3 more years and Draymond Green for 2 to 3 more years and then saying, yeah, we're doing we're going to, keep developing Kuminga, keep developing TJD, keep developing Podziemski, keep developing Moses Moody. That ain't it. That is the most losing formula of all the formulas, Greg. That is straight up, flat out, real talk. Final thought to you, my friend, and also want to let everybody know, make sure to listen to Greg tomorrow here on KNBR with Greg Papa and Silver, although I like to call it Greg and Greg. It just rolls off the tongue for me better. I know I've been told not to do that. I know you hate it or Greg hates it or everybody. I don't know.
Oh, I don't actually have an issue with it. We're actually
okay. So somebody hates it.
I won't.
Somebody hates it though. I was told somebody hates it. Not when I said it, but I think somebody else. Anyway, I don't want to get in the weeds here, but I don't want to get in the weeds on that specifically. But I had overheard that somebody was like, "Oh, somebody hates Greg and Greg." I'm like, "Oh, it kind of rolls off the tongue."
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. Walter, my co-producer, as you know very well, and he's going to be back from vacation tomorrow. He got a much-needed vacation, and so we're working on a little bit of some fun ideas ahead. And so I don't know exactly what's going to go down, but I do think that by maybe next week or so, it's not going to be Papa and Silver, and it's not going to be Greg and Greg either. We're going to find something somewhere in between, and I don't know what that's going to be, but stay tuned.
Oh, okay. What if it's Greg and Papa?
My middle name is an and, John.
Greg and Papa on the Sports Leader. I don't know. That's actually Kyle Hart like that, but that was actually terrible. That was actually kind of terrible. Greg, have a great night. Thank you, my friend. We will talk again soon. As you know, you are welcome on this program anytime you like. And I think we have a stream only coming up on Thursday. I think Thursday or Friday. One of the games, one of the first two on the road trip is a stream only, and we're talking about maybe doing something special for the Warriors Celtics game on the MLK holiday. But I appreciate you, brother. Have a great show. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you again soon, my man.
Thanks, chat. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, JD. We'll talk again soon, and maybe we'll have you on as a guest sometime in this 10 to 2 slot this week.
I'm actually going on vacation. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
I was like, during Warriors season.
I'm not going on vacation. Just the days when the Warriors are not playing, I'm going on vacation for a little bit, just for a short period of time. There were a lot of 49er Warrior crossover days, including today, where I don't know what today was. Today's like 5 hours at JD, which is not 8 hours and 45 minutes at JD, which is what it was last Monday. But there's been a lot of JD on the leader lately. You've had a fun holiday stretch. That's to say the least. It's been a lot of fun. So Greg, take care. We'll talk to you then. And yes, we'll figure out a day where I can come on. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's break here. We'll come back. Sounds of Dubs OT and fun with numbers as the Warriors lose 129.99. Is that what it was? 129.99. KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Did you hear something?
Yeah, like a swoosh.
Yeah.
Dubs OT presents the sounds of silver. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
All right, sounds of Dubs OT back here from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. Warriors get smoked by the Sacramento Kings. 129-99 is the final in the building behind me here. Let's get to sounds of Dubs OT. And we'll start, as we often do, with the head coach of the Warriors, Steve Kerr. And he addressed the loss, saying, hey, sometimes it just happens.
This is the NBA these days, you know. It's such a fast game and so many threes that there are just going to be some nights where everything goes your way or everything, you know, goes the other team's way. And I thought Sacramento was brilliant. They played a fantastic game. So we just have to regroup and get a day off and come back in on Tuesday.
All right, so day off for the Warriors tomorrow, back at it against the Heat on Tuesday. And, yeah, I mean, again, how you play at the beginning of the game, how locked in you are at the beginning of the game. Tonight was, again, I keep coming back to it, tonight was a not locked-in game for the Warriors, and that's unacceptable. You can't, coming off of 2 wins, and Stephen Curry rests the other night and pops back into the lineup, and it's like, oh, well, just going to win. Just show up and win. Show up and win. Kings don't have De'Aaron Fox. They're a terrible team. Like, going to just show up and, like, no, you got to play. You got to play. And when you don't play, you, especially against a team that's got talent, and the Kings do have talent. They are not a great team by any stretch. Right now, they're not even a play team. But they have talent, and when you allow them to put it together, they can get on a big-time roll and make it tough for you to catch up. More on that from Stephen Curry in just a moment. But here, let's hear again from Steve Kerr. And this was the one that had me and I think everybody scratching their head a little bit.
I mean, a loss is a loss, so it's not any more alarming than any other loss. So this is the NBA these days, you know. It's such a fast game and so many threes that there are just going to be some nights where everything goes your way or everything, you know, goes the other team's way. And I thought Sacramento was brilliant tonight. They played a fantastic game. So we just have to regroup and get a day off and come back in on Tuesday.
All right, regroup again. But, yeah, not any more alarming than any other loss. I think tonight's loss is more alarming than other losses. You got embarrassed at home because you weren't ready to go at the beginning of the game. You did the 2 things that you can't do against that opponent specifically that allow them to get off and start feeling themselves, which is take bad shots and turn the basketball over. So it again, I think is a scenario where, you know, when you're trying to build momentum and you're trying to show that you're going to have a little bit of resistance to maybe some bad luck that's been thrown your way in terms of this Jonathan Kuminga injury, you got to come out and play much sharper. And the Warriors just did not do that. And the Kings are on a heater right now, and those 2 things met, and that's how it turned into a game where the Warriors found themselves down by 39. All right, let's hear from Stephen Curry next. As he addressed specifically the Warriors getting embarrassed, losing by 30 after trailing by 39.
I don't know. I think nobody likes to get embarrassed like that, especially the way we started the first quarter. I know everybody's on a back-to-back. Obviously, I didn't play yesterday, and the Kings have a very fast-paced offense that they pretty much had every option they wanted and offensive rebounds in the first quarter. So when you're looking up and it's, you know, a double-digit lead before the first time out and 36-21, like, we're not really built for, especially with the situation, like, to have that crazy comeback. So I don't want to overreact to it, but you also have to address, you know, the execution that, you know, we didn't do. Obviously, I had a couple of turnovers in the first quarter. We were gifting them possessions. So it was just kind of a mindless first quarter that established their dominance, and we had no answer for it.
Yeah, and mindless gets you beat. Mindless gets you beat early and often if it's as mindless as that. But now it's about how do the Warriors ultimately end up responding. And here's the other part of it. I want to get this as a transition to the next cut from Steph Curry, because when you play a quarter like that, a mindless quarter, it sets you up to be in a position where you aren't playing from a position of strength. And the reason for that is the Warriors don't have the ability to come back from down big in games against teams that have the offensive prowess of the Kings when the Kings are cooking, and Curry talked about that.
I mean, we haven't shown that. It's just one of those things where you don't want to be in that situation. Like I said, especially a back-to-back where the guys exerted a lot of energy last night to get that win. So we would love to have started the game a lot better to give ourselves a chance and not be in that situation where we've been where, yeah, you're having to have crazy offensive fireworks to even have a chance to come back. Like, that's not our MO.
No, don't put yourself in that position. Again, I think part of the problem with Steph and Draymond specifically, though, is the fact that Steph and Draymond played on this team for a decade to where they were talented enough to be able to mess around a little bit at times with the game, but rally and be able to know that their big run was going to come, and then that big run would be good enough to wash away any of the struggles, that run would be good enough to wash away any of the bad. And now, this team just isn't talented or doesn't have enough firepower to be able to come back in it. So I think the adjustment, honestly, in games like tonight, we talk about some of the closer games and down the stretch turnovers. To me, those are the kinds of games where it doesn't necessarily matter as much, because or you just have to roll the dice and live with it, I think, a little bit more. The games like tonight where it's from the jump, to me, those are the kinds of games where Steph and Draymond as veterans have to set the tone to not take bad shots and not turn the basketball over. To me, you have to do it early. If you get caught up in a game and you're trying to make a play and you turn it over late, that's fine. Like that happens. It's not fine. It can lose you games. You don't want it. But to me, the emphasis has to be more in a game like tonight specifically, where you're not going to have the guy who's been your number 2 scorer here for the last few weeks, and you're playing a team that's on a little bit of a hot streak right now, that you have to play quality, smart basketball. And so to me, that's where it is on Steph and Draymond. Steph also, post-game, as we hear at Dubs OT, he addressed his turnovers specifically and how they led to the Kings gaining momentum in this game.
I only remember my 4, to be honest. It's the way you're built, you think about your mistakes. I threw a bad pass to Dennis in transition. I didn't see Keon behind him. And then got too deep in the paint, tried to fling it out and kind of lost it on a turnover. Got poked from behind on one, trying to drive, which that happens. And then one where me and Kyle got kind of mixed up when I was on the wing. He back cut, and we didn't have we weren't in sync on that. So all of those, for me, like, you want 2 of them back. You're going to have turnovers, but it's the type that are kind of demoralizing, because you're giving the other team an extra possession. You're giving the other team confidence. Like, oh, we stopped them, and it just feeds into the momentum of the game.
Yeah, and again, you can't have it. And as the Warriors look to win on the margins, you got to, again, not be making those kinds of mistakes, because the margin for error and the overall talent level doesn't allow it. I mean, again, for the Warriors, it goes back to the 12-3 team. The 12-3 team was not making those kinds of mistakes. They were playing buttoned up a lot more consistently. They were tenacious defensively, and they were winning games against good teams, against bad teams, really against all teams. Now, maybe they were out shooting those mistakes when they did make them, but the team that they've become is unfortunately the team that they've been here during these last two and a half years as we come up on the midpoint of this 2024-25 season. All right, one more cut. Let's hear from Kevon Looney, who did play and did play well in his opportunity to get out there. Kevon Looney addressed what made the Kings successful in the 30-point win.
I think we just went as sharp. We kind of was on our heels the whole game. We wasn't. Usually we're really physical. We were able to put people on them heels and kind of dictate what shots they're going to take. And I think the whole game we were just seemed like they was in our paint. They was pump faking, touching the paint, kicking it out, hitting threes. And when teams get confidence early, it's kind of tough to reel it back in. And I think that's what happened.
Yeah, and it happened in a major way early, and the Kings got it going and couldn't be slowed down. At that point, it all adds up to a game that will be flushed for the Warriors with the Sacramento Kings winning their fourth in a row. They improved to 17-19. Warriors now 18-17. The little two-game winning streak is officially over with the Warriors, their first loss here in the calendar year of 2025. All right, let's close it out here with some fun with numbers.
This is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun.
I'm a fun guy.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
All right, some fun with numbers tonight as the Warriors lose this one. Ugly game. This was the second largest margin of defeat for the Warriors against the Kings, and the worst defeat for the Warriors against the Kings in 24 plus years. You got to go back to November 8th of 2000. The Kings beat the Warriors 115-84. November 8th, 2000. Kings beat the Warriors in Sacramento 115-84. There were also two 30-point losses, one on January 24th, 1990, and then one that was Rochester against Philadelphia in 1949. So there have been four times. This tied for the second worst, and in the Sacramento era for the Kings against the Warriors, second worst defeat for the Warriors and victory for the Kings, losing this one by 30 points. Warriors have lost the last four to the Kings, including the play-in tournament. Second of four meetings coming up at Golden One Center in Sacramento 2 weeks from Wednesday night, January the 22nd. Warriors now 3-2 on the 6-game homestand, which will wrap up against the Miami Heat on Tuesday night before the Warriors hit the road for 4. And then they're going to be back home for a lot more. They got to start playing better again on the home floor if they're going to make something of this season. And again, they're going to have to do it now without Jonathan Kuminga. Third time this season, a Warriors opponent beat them from the jump, wire to wire, never trailed, and the Kings never trailed in this one. The Warriors are 1-8 now, and they fail to score 100 points. Only 99 tonight, and the 22 turnovers. Third time this year, the Warriors tied their season high in terms of turnovers. Warriors opponent season high 34 points off turnovers. So the turnovers were a huge part of it. And again, I think the shot turnovers were as bad as the regular turnovers in this one. Stephen Curry, 20 of his game high, tying 26 in the first half, trying to keep the Warriors with some glimmer of hope heading toward the second half. 2 4-point plays for Stephen Curry, 68 4-point plays now in his career for Stephen Curry. So we'll call it a night on that note. Big thanks to Kyle Haar in our San Francisco studios. Long day for Kyle Haar. He was on 49ers coverage as I was beginning at 10 in the morning, and Kyle was working way before 10 in the morning as well. Big thanks to Kyle. Big thanks to Ryan McCarthy. Kyle, am I leaving anybody else out that was helping to cut tonight?
No, yeah, it was just a two-man show, but yeah, kudos to you too for hanging in there. I know it was a long day for you. Yeah, long day, and kudos to you. Thanks to Ryan McCarthy.
Thanks to Greg Silver for joining me. Thanks to Alex and Shay here at Harmonic Brewing, and Mike, who was here earlier as well. We'll talk to you again on Tuesday right here from Harmonic. Warriors lose at 129-99. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Rebound, and Sabonis puts it in. So what could have been a 19-point game is ballooned to 33. We're going to have extensive garbage time in this fourth quarter upcoming.
John Dickinson.
No, God! No, God, please, no, no!
Big audio quality show.
You are a sicko, and I appreciate you for it because I'm a sicko.
I just know they kicked our ass tonight.
No class, no balls.
The loss is a loss, so it's not any more alarming than any other loss. So
No class, no balls.